Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Hashem should bless you. This is wobbling a little bit. Whatever. There you go. Okay. There we go. You see me? If you're watching, please say hi so I can know that you're watching. Give me your comments. If you're sitting here in the room, say hi. Thank you. Thank you. What? Let me just open up the source sheet in front of me so I'll be able to have it on my end as well. All good? Tonight's class is in the memory of Yitzchak Simon Yosef, as Neshama should have an elevation. Okay. I got you and Ravit. One second, over in chat. Ravit to watch. Is Ravit at the show also? No, she's watching it from home. Okay. Good evening, Ravit. Good evening, Kim. Good evening, everyone watching. Please say hi. Don't be shy. Oh, there was your dad joke. Please say hi. Don't be shy. That was like almost a natural. Shavua Tov Art. I'm glad you're with us. Okay, so I actually have a good joke. It won't qualify as a dad joke. In fact, you can't even say it to your little kid. They won't even get it, maybe. It's not a adult joke, but it's not a kid joke. So this guy gets into a taxi, and he gives the taxi address, the taxi driver the address where he's going to. He sits back to mind his own business. He's looking out the window for 10 minutes of peaceful silence in the car. And all of a sudden he remembers he forgot to tell the taxi driver that he wants to stop 2 blocks before his destination to pick something up before he goes home. Okay? So he leans over to the taxi driver, casually taps him on the shoulder to tell him they're going to stop 2 blocks before his home. And when he taps on the taxi driver's shoulder and says, "Excuse me," the taxi driver shrieks, literally jumps up in the seat, swerves across all 3 lanes of oncoming traffic, totally loses control of the car. They spin around. He finally stops the car, and the driver is panting like he just had the scare of his life. So the guy says, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I didn't realize you're such a sensitive driver. If I tap you on your shoulder while you're driving, you'll freak out and cut across all of incoming traffic." And the taxi driver says, "It's not your fault at all. Today's my first day driving a taxi. For the last 25 years, I've been driving a hearse." Hi, Michael.
Thank you for that.
Oh my. Okay, Stephanie, how are you? Hello, Mia Kale. I have to learn how to pronounce your name, from snowy Yukon. And hello, Shira from the West Coast. Hello, Lisa. Hello, everyone. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about people that drive the hearse. Not really, close. We'll be talking about what's inside the hearse and the burial process. Not so much the burial process, but the importance and the significance of having a kosher burial. Now, why am I talking about it this week? Because it means the Bible. Oh, she should definitely like the joke. Hello, Carmen. How are you? She's watching us from Texas. That's great. So in this week's Torah reading, we have a very famous and very interesting dialogue between Yaakov, Jacob, and his son Joseph right before or soon before he is going to die. It's a fascinating dialogue. If you're watching on my personal page, I'm going to share my screen so you can read the text inside. If not, you can open up a Chumash, a Bible, to Genesis chapter 47, which is at the very beginning of this week's Torah reading. Okay? And the Torah tells us, verse 29, when the time drew near for Israel to die. Israel is another name for Yaakov. Jacob had 2 names, Yaakov and Yisrael. So when the time drew near for Israel to die, he called his son Joseph, and he said to him, "If I have now found favor in your eyes, now place your hand beneath my thigh, and you shall deal with me loving kindness and truth. Do not bury me now in Egypt. I will lie with my forefathers, and you shall carry me out." No, that says, "I will lie with my forefathers, I will pass away." In the Torah, the word for death is, "I will lie with my fathers, and after I pass away, you shall carry me out of Egypt, and you shall bury me in their grave." And he said, Joseph said, "I will do as you say." And he, meaning Jacob, said to Joseph, "It's not enough for me. I'm not satisfied with you just promising me and telling me you'll do as I say. I want you to swear unto me." And Joseph swore unto him, And in Israel, again, Jacob bowed down upon the bed's head, which is where the Shekhinah rests. This is a very interesting conversation that needs to be discussed from a few perspectives. So let's first understand the context. What's the context? Jacob knows he's about to die. He feels he's near the end of his life. He's not literally on his deathbed yet, but he feels that my life is near the ending. And so he calls of his 12 sons. He realizes that if he's going to be able to not be buried in Egypt, but to be taken out of Egypt and be buried in the land of Israel, which of his sons will have the power to make that happen? Joseph, right? He's the viceroy of Egypt. He's the one with the authority and the power to be able to make that happen. And so he brings of all of his sons Joseph. He says, I want you to do for me a kindness and a truth. If you look back in the Hebrew, I'm going to go back to the Hebrew for a second, because I should have showed them, but it's okay. If you pay attention in the words that he says, I want you to do for me a chesed ve'emes. You see, it's in the Hebrew is backwards. Okay, never mind. The Hebrew is backwards, but if you look on the very end of the second line, it says chesed ve'emes. But in the Hebrew, I did this a little quickly. The Hebrew went, but trust me, the Hebrew says chesed ve'emes, a kindness and the truth. And in the English, they add the word loving kindness and truth. Again, I did this, I just grabbed, pasted, loving kindness and truth. But the Hebrew is chesed. What does chesed mean? Kindness. And emes means truth. They combined it into one, the loving kindness and truth. Do not bury me in Egypt. So, and then when Joseph says to his father, yes, my father, I'll do as you say. I promise I'll take you out of the land and I'll bury you in Egypt. Yaakov is not satisfied with the promise. What does he want? An oath. Correct. He wants an oath. He wants him to swear to him. And where does he make him swear? He tells him, put your hand under my thigh. Yeah, that's a great place to put your hand. You know what's under your thigh? I won't ask you. Now comes the joke, the adult joke. No, I'm just going. Under your thigh is where your bris is. That's where the male productive organ is, but that's where your bris is. And for the Jews living before the giving of the Torah, when the Torah had not yet been given to the Jewish people, what was the most holy mitzvah that a Jew had? Well, let me say the question differently. What was the only mitzvah that had been formally commanded by God to the Jews to do? The only mitzvah that God had formally commanded the Jewish people, Abraham, and then his son Isaac, was to have a bris, to have a circumcision. So yes, we know that the forefathers kept the Torah before it had been given, and yes, they ate matzah, and yes, they put on tefillin, and they did many other mitzvot, but the tefillin of Yaakov was not inherently holy, because the tefillin of Yaakov was something that Yaakov on his own chose to do. It wasn't because God had told him to do it. And therefore, because he did it on his own volition, not because God said it to him, it didn't have the same level of holiness as something you do, not because I chose to, but because I'm doing the will of God. The only mitzvah that Yaakov has, which is coming not on his own, but because God told him to do it, is the mitzvah of circumcision. So he says, I want you to swear on the holiest thing that I have. Like today you swear on the Bible, because if you just make an oath, okay, maybe I was crossing my fingers behind my back, maybe. But if you make an oath with your hand on the Torah scroll, you're not going to lie. Now your hand's on the Bible, right? Your hand's on the Torah. So Yaakov says to son, I want you to swear on the holiest thing that I have. The holiest thing that I have is the one mitzvah that God gave me formally, officially, my bris. Hold on to my bris and make an oath to me that you will not give in to pressure and you will take me out of the land of Egypt. And by the way, this oath actually became very instrumental in allowing Yosef to force Pharaoh to allow him to bury Yaakov in Egypt. You see, Pharaoh didn't want to allow Jacob to be buried in Egypt. Pharaoh did not want to allow Yaakov to be taken out of Egypt and to be buried in Israel. He wanted him to be buried in Egypt. And when Yosef first came to Pharaoh, said, I want to take you, my father, to the promised land, to the family burial spot in Hebron, by Ma'arat HaMachpelah, by the cave, originally, Pharaoh said no. And then Yosef said to Pharaoh, but I have to. I made an oath to my father. I swore to him. And if you make me break my oath to my father, then that means oaths are not important to you. And if that's the case, then I'm also going to break the oath that I made to you many years earlier. What was the oath that Yosef had made to Pharaoh many years earlier? When he came out of the dungeon and he interpreted the dreams for Pharaoh, Pharaoh began to test Yosef's ability to be a king in Egypt. And one of the laws was that a king has to speak every language. And he began to test Yosef in every language, and Yosef responded in every language as he climbed the steps of Pharaoh's throne. And then when he finished testing him in all the languages he knew, Yosef began speaking to Pharaoh in Hebrew. And Pharaoh did not speak Hebrew, which means that Yosef actually knew more languages than Pharaoh did. And Pharaoh made Yosef swear to him he would never divulge to anyone the secret that Yosef could speak more languages than the king. So Yosef says to Pharaoh, if you want me to break the oath I made to my father, not that he would be buried in Israel in his family, burial plot, okay, then I start breaking oaths. There's another oath I'm going to break, the one I made to you many years ago that I know more languages than you. So Pharaoh had no choice. He had to keep the secret. So he had no choice but to allow Yosef to fulfill the oath he made to his father to bury him in Israel. So the oath actually had a lot of impact and was actually part of what the Medrash tells us allowed Yosef to fulfill his father's final wishes. But what I want to really talk about tonight, actually one more thing I want to read first before I get to the main thing I want to talk about tonight, is why did it bother Yaakov so much that he should be buried in Israel and not in Egypt? So Rashi tells us there's three reasons why. There's three reasons why Yaakov says to his son, I don't want to be buried here, but I want you to go through all of the expense and all of the hassle and all of the effort to take me out of this country, take me to a different land to bury me there. He says, do not bury me in Egypt. Why not? Number one, because in the end, the ground will become dust and insects will swarm there. When the plague of lice will happen, where do the lice of Egypt come from? The dust of Egypt. If you remember the plagues, the third plague is a plague of lice. How does the lice come upon everyone? Yeah, he hits the dust. Aaron takes a stick of Moses. He hits the earth, and from the earth comes out the lice. So the lice will be afflicted from the dust. So I don't be buried in the dust, which will become like lice. Number two, those buried outside of the land are brought to life through the rolling of the tunnel. Meaning when Mashiach will come, and we're going to experience Tchiat HaMeis and the resurrection of the dead, so we know that all those that are buried in the ground will be resurrected and come back to life. Where will we be resurrected? So if we're in Israel, when we're buried, those who are buried, they'll come back to life. Those that are buried outside the land of Israel will roll through underground tunnels until they get to the land of Israel, and then their resurrection will happen in the land of Israel. So I don't want to go through the pain of the rolling in the tunnels underground to get to Israel. I want to be buried there, so immediately when Mashiach comes, I can experience an immediate resurrection. And thirdly, Egypt will one day become dust that is worshipped. This is an incorrect translation. Egypt will come to worship him. It's not want to become like an idol and a shrine where the people would worship him. Meaning, there's three reasons why Yaakov is afraid to be buried in Egypt. Number one, because of the plague of lice that will happen. Number two, I don't want to have to go through the pain of rolling in underground tunnels to have resurrection. Number three, I don't want my place of burial to become a shrine where the Egyptians will come and pray and do all their stuff over there. Why would the Egyptians make Yaakov's burial place a shrine? Do you know? I mentioned it because of Yosef, but more than just Yosef. How long was the famine supposed to be? 7 years. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. And how long the famine actually lasted for? Only 2 years. Didn't last all 7 years. You know why not? When Yaakov came and he met Pharaoh, he gave Pharaoh a blessing. And what was the blessing? That the water of the Nile should rise up to greet Pharaoh. And by this blessing, Yaakov ended the famine 5 years early. He ended the famine 5 years early. So people knew that Yaakov was a miracle worker because Yaakov was the one that gave a blessing that allowed the waters of the Nile to rise and ended the famine early. So he knew that people will come to worship by his burial place. He didn't want that to happen to him. So take me out from here and take me to the land of Israel. Okay. What I want to focus on, though, is these two words that I already briefly mentioned, which are fundamental words in Judaism. Words that if you go to the average religious Jew and you say these two words, I'll know immediately what you're talking about. And those are the words chesed ve'emes. In fact, one of the big organizations said it's called chesed shel emes, kindness of truth. Now, why is this oath that Yaakov is demanding of his son to make sure that he has a proper kosher burial? That he should not be buried in Egypt, but be taken to the land of Israel and buried in the proper Jewish cemetery with a Jewish, ceremony, etc. Why is it so important? He says this is a chesed ve'emes. It's an oath of kindness and an oath of truth. And Rashi tells us these two words are not just regular words. Good evening, everyone watching from all over the world. These two words tell us something very important, which is as follows. Look at the Rashi, text number 2. The Rashi on Genesis chapter 47, verse 29. Rashi tells us that the words chesed ve'emes is that the chesed, the kindness that is done for the deceased, is considered the ultimate kindness, a true kindness. Why? Because there is no expectation of repayment or reward. Meaning, whenever you do a favor for somebody, in the back of your mind, there's always some kind of expectation that one day I'm going to get the favor returned. Or one day they'll do a different favor for me. Or like you'll tell someone, like, so if I do you a favor, even if I tell you, I'm not asking you to get paid. I'm not asking you to do something for me. I'm doing it altruistically. I'm doing it because I'm a nice guy. I know it's a mitzvah and I want to help you. So I say, I'll do you a favor. I'll give you a ride. I'll make a phone call, whatever my favor is. I'm not actually consciously expecting something in return. But subconsciously, there's always some expectation. I did something for you. If one day I ever need, you'll return the favor, right? That's. However, when you do a favor for somebody who's no longer amongst the living, you already went to the next world. So I do you a favor. You're alive, so one day you can help me. But if I go to do a favor for someone that's dead, can they ever do me a favor? No, not in this world. Now, they could in the next world, which is why it's powerful to pray at their graves and all that. But no, they can't do a favor for us in this world. And therefore, because there's no expectation of getting something in return, it is considered the ultimate kindness. A chesed of emes. In Hebrew, a kindness of the truth. It's chesed of emes, of truth. Because it's being done 100% altruistically. 100% for the right reason, for no expectation of anything in return. And so this is what we're going to talk about now. Why is a burial so important? And why does Yaakov describe this as the truest kindness that you could possibly do to him? So I'm going to tell you, I have my own question. This is a question. If you've been, Michael, you've been to funerals that I've officiated. Probably you've. I say this at almost every funeral when we're doing the burial. Unless it's already a long time, a lot of speeches. When we do the burial part, and I explain the importance of putting earth into the ground and the first shovel upside down, I always explain that this is a big mitzvah to be involved in the burial of a person. Till today, going to help make a minyan, going to help, not only minyan, going to a funeral and showing dignity and honor and respect to the person who was deceased. Because the more people that are at the funeral, the more of kavod hames it is, the more of honor and glory it is to the deceased. The more you do that, the more time you can do such a mitzvah, it's considered the ultimate kindness. More than doing a favor for a living person. It's a favor to a non-living person. But it's a more true, it's a more altruistic, it's a more sincere act of kindness. So I had a question. When you go to a funeral, yes, it's a kindness to the deceased that's no longer living. But there's also a lot of living people around. And they know who came to their mother's funeral, their father's funeral. They're keeping track. They remember if you were there or not there. So At the same time, now you can normally think, people will think, that when you go to a funeral, who are you going for? The children or for the deceased? You would say you're going for the children. And that's why many people go. And if that's the reason why you're going, you're missing the ultimate kindness. Because actually what Yaakov is saying over here is that the ultimate act of the funeral is not for the children or for the spouse or for whoever it is. It's for the deceased themselves. The ultimate kindness of attending a funeral, not only of attending a funeral, of attending and participating and giving honor and doing something to honor a deceased person, is the greatest act of kindness, more important than the support and the love and the sympathy we're giving to the family and the mourners that are here in this world. Why? Well, you don't have to say it to them. You don't have to say it to them. So it should be understood. It's not. By the way, it's not true, because when you come to the funeral, does a family member always say, "You're such a nice guy"? The one your father was such a nice guy, right? Even the children at a funeral are not there for themselves. They're there to honor their father or mother, whoever, And you are showing support, and you are helping them through. But what I want to bring out right now is that although it's true, that's not the ultimate objective of going to a funeral. Now you can have more than one reason for doing a mitzvah.
Well, now I just know what the protocol is, and I can give someone a cold shoulder.
No, it's not the.
Give a family a cold shoulder and just let them know I've already said my piece. I've already done my act of kindness. I'm moving on.
By the way, for families seeing the number of people that come to, people told me, look how many people hear my father's funeral. Like, it means a lot. When people have a lot of people showing up, that in itself is very comforting and very,
Yeah, I remember with Danny's funeral,
the room is full.
The room was full, and they called they made one phone call, and next thing you know, you got 40 Jews showing up for.
And that's beautiful. And as a family member being there, it's important. So, and I'm not in any way minimizing the impact of your presence on the living family members. Just being there, and you don't have to say anything, by the way. Sometimes you say something, you actually ruin it. Sometimes it's better to show up at a funeral and just be present, not to. But that's not. But the point is that when Yaakov says to Joseph, "I want to have an oath from you that you're going to bury me in Israel," this is not just a kindness for you, for the Jewish people, for a nice tradition to have me buried in the family plot. For me, for Yaakov, the guy that's about to die, who will not be able to help you ever again. Meaning, I'm going to be dead, and I won't be able to give you anything after I'm dead. But when you do this kindness for me, that will be the ultimate kindness that you can do. The ultimate kindness. Why is this the ultimate kindness? Why is it the ultimate kindness? Not just to honor the legacy of the departed and remembrance of the deceased. It's when you show up, when you make sure someone's buried properly, for them, this has tremendous impact on them. Why? So there's a misconception that many people have. Obviously, it's not a Jewish idea, but I'm sure many Jews still think in these terms, which is that when a person dies, they don't feel anything anyway. Right? They don't feel anything. They're dead. So obviously, we do a beautiful ceremony and a beautiful funeral and all that because it's the family. So it's important for the kids to see how the parent is handled with care and reverence and dignity, not because the actual person knows the difference. That's a very common, incorrect misconception that some people have. Now, obviously, that's not correct.
I was going to say, it sounds like you're elevating the soul by being there for the deceased person.
Oh, so let me clarify. Yeah, it's selflessness when you do something for someone that's not alive anymore. People, let me. You're right. I want to be more clear when I say. People think, even Jews will say, the soul knows what's going on at the funeral. Meaning, so obviously when you show up at a funeral, the soul is present because the soul is present until the body is laid to rest. So when the body is laid to rest, then the soul is allowed to its rest. And we know this is why one of the reasons why we try to rush, at least not to wait, too long between the death and the burial, because as long as the body is not laid to its rest, the soul cannot begin its rest in heaven. We say in Yiddish, nishtahin, nishtaher, not here, not there. It's a tough time for the soul who's kind of like homeless. It sees its body, but it can't live in its body, but it can't go to heaven because they haven't yet put the body to its rest. So let me be more specific in my language. People have a misconception that after the person dies, the body is meaningless. The body is old news. The body was the vessel of the soul. The body was the vehicle by which the soul did all the good and the kindness and the mitzvot that it did during its lifetime. But now that that lifetime is ended, the soul appreciates you coming to the funeral and giving honor and dignity to the soul. But the body, and then it's over. And what happens to the body afterwards is temporary. The body will decompose, the body, whatever. So if it's buried in a Jewish cemetery, not Jewish cemetery, if you burned it, God forbid, if you, whatever. The body is dead. The body is lifeless. The soul, the body is not aware of what's happening to the body. It's the soul. The soul is going to heaven. That's a misconception that many people have. You can imagine some people saying that, right? It's easy to think in those terms. When Jacob says to when Jacob says to Yosef, don't bury me in Egypt. Why not? Because I'm going to be bothered in probably more than 100 years from now. When Jews were in Egypt for 210 years. So from when Yaakov died until the plague of lice is almost, it's like 180, it's like 120 something years. Sorry, 180 years, 37. So 180 years later, there's going to be a plague of lice. And yet Yaakov knows that when the earth that he's buried in is hit by a plague and turns into lice, that will pain him. Not only that, he's saying, when in thousands of years from now, Mashiach will come, and there'll be the resurrection of the dead, and my body will have to roll through all these underground tunnels to come to the land of Israel, be resurrected. That rolling in the tunnels will be painful for me. It's going to be painful for me. And therefore, I want you to bury my body in Israel so that my body will not have to go through this experience of rolling through tunnels to have the Tchiyat HaMesim, to have the resurrection. Same thing, the third reason. I don't want people to come pray at I don't want the Egyptians to make a shrine and an idol worship out of my grave. Who cares? The soul's in heaven. The body is decomposing. Even though the body of a tzaddik doesn't decompose, but let's not go there right now. And yet, what happens to the body directly impacts the soul. And the soul continuously and eternally feels a connection to its body. And therefore, if the place of the body 180 years later has lice, or if the place of the body becomes a shrine of idol worship, that will have a negative impact on the soul. Just like if you come to pray at the grave of a person, that has a positive impact on the soul. Has a positive impact. Why is that? So, first we see the facts. That's what Jacob is saying in the Bible. But we know that there's a nefesh with 5 levels to the soul. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chayich. I don't want to spend too long on this one particular point because there's more I want to share. But the lowest of the 5 levels of the soul is called the nefesh, which is the physiological life force the fact that all of us are breathing and our digestive system is working and our heart is pumping and our lungs are expanding and contracting. That's all coming from our nefesh. And that part of the nefesh, anyway, remains connected to the body. And that's why even after the body loses the soul, a part of the soul remains connected to the body. That's why if a priest enters into a cemetery, they're going to become ritually impure because there's a nefesh there. And that's why if you go to the grave of somebody you love, you can feel a connection to that person there. And that's why we go pray at the graves of tzaddikim. Once had a whole class on the connection of the nefesh to the ruach and the ruach to the neshama and Gan Eden. Was it a whole class from what it says in the prayers from Kabbalah that we read at the grave of tzaddikim, all from Kabbalah. And tonight's not a Kabbalah class, and I don't want to spend too long on this concept. But the fact is that there's a nefesh connected to the body eternally. And therefore, the way the body is buried, the dignity with which the body is buried, the place where it's buried, all continue to have a long-term impact on the spiritual rest, on the state of serenity and peace of the soul itself. And so Alice is asking a question that when you're buried outside of Israel, you're waiting till Mashiach comes. Yes. It's obviously better to be buried in Israel. That being said, being buried outside of Israel, if it's in a Jewish cemetery and you're buried in a dignified place according to Jewish law, in shrouds, etc., buried amongst other righteous people, so at least you're, so to say, waiting with your own. You're still waiting, but it's not as bad. God forbid to be buried in a non-Jewish cemetery, to be buried in a non-proper way, it's worse. It's worse. Okay. Now, share a story. We're going to hear a crazy story. I'm going to put it into the text, but it's long, and I want to just say the story. So the Gemara in Brachas, page 18b, it's a Talmudic story, describes the ability of the souls or to feel pain from their bodies after death. And the Gemara is just talking a whole thing about the people that are Rishayim, wicked people are considered dead, if they are dead, not dead. So then the Gemara makes a statement. Is it true that the dead don't know what's happening to them, that they don't feel what's happening to their bodies? Isn't it written in the verse in Job, only in his flesh does he feel pain? In his soul does he, only in his flesh does he feel pain, and only in his soul does he mourn? It's a question, meaning it's rhetorical. He feels, the soul mourns the pain of the flesh. And that's why we have a teaching of the rabbis, that Rabbi Yitzchak said that the maggots in the grave are as excruciating to the dead as a stab of a needle to the flesh of the living. Should have put this into the source sheet. The body is going through its purification process in the grave, and the body has to decompose, etc., which is the cleansing of the body from the pleasures that it had of this physical world. It's called chibut hakever. And I say I'm about to get distracted, I'll try not to, because I still want to get to cremation and resurrection. Chibut hakever, the purgatory of the grave, where the body is cleansed of the pleasures it had in this lifetime. And the soul is feeling what's happening to the body as it's in the grave, being consumed, etc. The soul feels it. And that's part of its cleansing process. And then the Gemara brings a story, a crazy story. So it says that there was an incident involving a pious man who gave a poor man a dinar, very nice donation, right before Rosh Hashanah, on the Erev Rosh Hashanah, during a year of drought. And when his wife found out that he gave such a big donation to this poor person before Rosh Hashanah, when they were struggling with money, she got very angry at him, and she mocked him, and she kicked him out of the house. So where did he go sleep? I guess he didn't have any friends. He can go crash the living room and sleep on their couch. So instead, he went to go sleep in the cemetery. You kind of know where the story is going because you know the topic of the class. So he went to, but very good. He went to the cemetery. I don't think that's where I would go sleep if I was kicked out of the house, but just saying, I'll probably call one of you guys first. I don't know. But thank you. Yeah. Anyway, whatever. I'll figure it out. I'll probably get a hotel room. I don't know. But he went to the cemetery. So he went to sleep in the cemetery. And as he's sleeping in the cemetery, he hears two spirits conversing with one another. And one said to the other, my friend, let us roam the world and hear from behind the pargo. The pargo is the expression of like behind the curtain. What's the plan for the year to come? What calamity will befall the world in this year? It's Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is living in the cemetery. And these two souls are talking to each other. Let's go hear what's the plan for the world this coming year. So one spirit says to the other, I cannot go with you. Why not? Because I am buried in a mat of reeds. Meaning the family was too poor or too cheap to bury this person in a proper linen shrouds. So instead they found some old reeds and they buried the person not in the proper linen shrouds. So the soul, the spirit is saying to his friend, I want to go with you, hang out in heaven and see what's going on, but I don't have shrouds. I'm embarrassed. I can't go. I'm embarrassed to go. I don't know exactly. I can't go with you. So you go and come back and report back to me what you hear, but I'm embarrassed to go because I'm buried in a mat of reeds and not in shrouds. Okay? So the other spirit says, okay, went, came back. What did you hear? What's the gossip? Or is it young generation? What's the tea? My sister says she has tea for me. Tea for me. I have a sister that's 20 years younger than me. She tells me I went to her house when I was in New York. She has tea. Tea. Tea is a new expression for gossip. Okay, she has. Anyway, so what's the news? So he said, I heard that anyone who sows during the first rainy season, hail will fall and strike his crops. However, the second season will be good. So this guy didn't. Everyone went to plow and the season. What happened? Hail came, destroyed everyone's stuff. This guy heard in the cemetery the hail is going to come, so he waited till after the hail. He plowed and whatever, and he had a very successful crop. His crop was not stricken. He made a lot of money. So the following year comes Rosh Hashanah. What does this guy do? He says, "Let me go back to the cemetery." I guess this year's wife didn't kick him out and say he went back to the cemetery, and again he hears these two spirits conversing one with the other. And one says, let's roam the world and hear from behind the curtain what's going to happen. And the other one says, my friend, didn't anybody tell you I can't go? I'm buried in a mat of reeds. I don't have the shrouds to go. You go, come back and tell me. So the other spirit goes, comes back, and she says to her friend, what did you hear? She says, I heard that those who sow during the second rainy season, blight will strike his crops. It'll be a bad season. So this man went. Everyone else was waiting because last year was bad news. He went right away, plowed and whatever, very, very early. And everyone else waited. And their crops were blighted and his was not. Again, he made a lot of money. So, but now this pious man's wife is getting a little curious how this guy is playing the game smart. So she told him. He told his wife. That was his mistake. Wife that kicks you into the cemetery. He tells his wife the story. Okay? Not more than a few days went by. What happened? This woman, the wife, got into a quarrel between the mother of the young woman that had been buried in the cemetery. They got into a fight. And this wife that had heard from her husband about the girl that was buried, that didn't have proper burial shrouds and reeds or whatever, she makes a comment to the mother, says, yeah, you're saying you're so important. Go and I'll show that your daughter is buried in a mat of reeds. She didn't have a proper burial. She made a comment like that. Next year, Rosh Hashanah, the man goes back to the cemetery to go and hear what's the gossip for the year ahead. You know what happens? No. One comes back to say, my friend, let's roam the world and hear what's happening. And the one that's buried in the mat of reeds says, my friend, leave me alone. As the word that we have privately exchanged between us has been heard among the living. This is a crazy story. Let me explain to you this story. There's 3 points here. Number one, the guy gave charity. Because he gave charity before Rosh Hashanah, he gave a very big donation. He gave him the ability to hear what the spirits in the cemetery are saying. It's already mind-boggling. It's a drought. He gave charity. He was blessed to hear what they're saying in the cemetery. Number two, the spirits that are resting in the cemetery feel what they're buried in. It makes a difference to this soul, to this person, buried in reeds instead of in the proper shrouds, that they weren't buried properly. And they were carrying this eternal shame on the way that they were buried. And therefore they didn't feel comfortable going into heaven to see what's going on. And thirdly, when this wife made a comment to the mother of the one that had buried her, not in the cemetery. The comment was made in Publix, and I don't know where, in Shul by the Kiddush. By the Kiddush, they were yapping over the cholent, and she made a comment to her. Yeah, wasn't she? They were talking in Shul, in the supermarket, in the square, wherever they met, by the laundry by the river. The comment that the wife made to the mother was felt by the daughter buried in the cemetery. And it gave her even more shame. So much so that Rosh Hashanah, she knows this guy is listening to our conversations, we can't talk. So this tells you something fascinating. Fascinating. That we think that after a person buries, it's only about the soul. The body is not so important. Says Yaakov to his son Yosef should know that when you bury me in the land of Israel, the proper kosher burial, in our family burial spot, in a place where I won't have to roll through tunnels to be resurrected, in a place where I won't become a shrine for Egyptian idol worship, in a place where I won't experience 180 years from now a plague of lice that will last for 7 days, and you spare me that anguish in the future, that will be a chesed ve'emes. That will be a kindness of truth, a kindness, an ultimate kindness that will last forever and ever, because you're doing something for me that will have an eternal impact on my spiritual rest, on my state of peace and serenity, being buried in the proper kosher way. Amazing. Amazing. The Hebrew words? Chesed shel emes. With a kindness of truth. Well, so the word we say today, chesed shel emes, which, okay, the words in the Bible, the words that Yaakov used was do for me a chesed ve'emes, which means a kindness and a truth. 2 words, 2 things in one oath, a kindness and a truth. We combine them. Rashi combines it into one. So it's not 2 different things. It's not like he's asking his son to do for me a kindness, number 1, and number 2, do for me an act of truth. But the act of truth is the kindness, because it's a true kindness. It's the ultimate kind of kindness that has no expectation of return, of paying back the favor one day in the future. And therefore, the chesed, the kindness, is the ultimate kindness. It's a chesed shel emes, a kindness of truth, which is how today we refer to it when you go to be involved in helping someone who needs a proper burial, called the chesed shel emes, the kindness of truth, the ultimate kindness. Clear? And there's many beautiful stories of people that had this chesed shel emes done to them. I'm going to show you an amazing one soon, but I'm already behind where I wanted to be. But let me answer this very good question. Wasn't Yaakov embalmed? If so, why did Joseph allow this to be done? That's a good question. Good question, Alice. We know one of the laws of a kosher burial is not to embalm the person. Why? Because, as we're going to read in a second, let's read this verse. So the verse tells us, one second, let me see in a second. Why do you need to be buried? Actually, I don't have that verse here. Why do you need to be buried in the ground? Because from earth you are. What does it say in Job? It says in Job, the very, very famous words, that from earth you are, and to earth you shall return. That's what Hashem says. Actually, that's not Job. Sorry, that's from God. When God punished Adam at the Garden of Eden, He said to him, "By the sweat of your brow you will work," right? And from earth you are, to earth you shall return. Yeah.
But when you go to Rachel's tomb, or the patriarchs, right? That's a tomb. They're not buried in the ground. They're in a tomb, right?
So they're buried in the ground. There's a monument above where there's a marker where they are. So the monument is a place for people to gather and to pray and to come pay respects. But they themselves are actually in the ground. When you go to Ma'arsa Machpelah and you go like upstairs and all that, you're not even where they're buried. They're buried in the cave below that. Herod built a building on top of where they're buried, and we're on like some
So all those places that we went to, they were buried actually in the ground.
underneath. In the cave in Hebron, you go upstairs. It's not even where they're buried below there. Cave under there. Rachel's tomb too. Also, there's like a monument. It's like a marker. Like when you go,
Now I feel cheated. You didn't take me down below.
you can't underground.
You only took me to the tomb of the top.
Hey, you know what that's like? That would be like you go to the cemetery, okay? I'm saying a serious thing. You go to the cemetery and here's the marker, right? The gravestone. And the kid says, that's not where they're buried in the gravestone. They're buried over here on the ground, like you're stepping on top of them. They're not buried in the gravestone. They're buried underneath your feet. Okay. So I'm going to go off. I want about Tchiyas Mason, but I want to also answer this question. Alice asked a good question. So the embalming. So let me say this, and maybe we'll do another class because there's still so much more to talk about still. But maybe we'll do another class. But here's what I want to explain about the kosher burial and the shrouds, etc., and why it's so important in the whole tahara when the people that do the burial process, not the burial, the preparation process for the burial, which is called a tahara, where they purify a body to be in a state of cleanliness and a state of purity before the burial, because again, how they are when they're laid to rest is important. And if they're dirty or if they're not clean and not pure, that has a permanent impact. So we want them to be in a state of purity and cleanliness, in the state of peace. They apologize to the person they're burying. They do everything in the way that they can, not to look at the person undressed as much as possible. They do everything they can to maintain the dignity of the person, even though they're not alive, for that very reason. And therefore, so there's many, many laws how this is done. One of the laws of kosher burial is that the body has to be in something which will decompose and become part of the earth. So in Israel, they don't even use coffins. In Israel, they bury wrapped in shrouds and the talus. They use a talus, or they'll use like the cover of a beam or something, and they're laid right in the earth like that, and the decomposing is easier. In America, I don't know how it is in Europe and whatever, but in America for sure, that's not allowed. We bury in coffins, but the coffin must be wood that will decompose. Has to be preferably a simple pine coffin, because there's another conversation that for Jews, we don't spend a lot of money. Today, dying is pretty expensive, but we don't spend elaborate, etc. I don't get distracted. We don't waste money on that. So a simple pine coffin that's going to decompose, but any wood coffin is okay. So if a person wants to spend more money and get a fancy, with designs and the shellacked wood, it's not plain. You want to get like cloth inside. That's allowed as long as it's wood and it will decompose. So it's fine. You want to upgrade to a more fancy coffin, you're allowed to, and that's okay. But a metal iron coffin would not be allowed because it can't decompose. In addition, you can't embalm the body in a way that the body won't mummify it. So in Egypt, and part of why Yaakov did not want to be buried in Egypt is in Egypt they would mummify the people that were buried to keep them, to preserve them. In fact, they felt that if the body decomposes, the body is lost. And they would, to maintain, in order for the person to come back to life and all that, they had to mummify them. And Yaakov didn't want that to happen to him. So when it says in the Torah that Yosef was embalmed, it means that they put spices to slow down his decaying process. And I'll explain to you by a story. Years ago, as a younger rabbi, I get a phone call from a family that they have a relative, a mother, I don't know who it was, that died in California. Her husband had been buried in Florida many years before. They lived in Florida. She ended up moving, whatever, but they're bringing her back to Florida, to be buried here. She doesn't live in Florida. The family is here. They're bringing her to Florida. This was on Wednesday, Thursday, and the funeral was going to be till next week. Till, I don't remember what day it was. Okay, so I make up, no problem. The funeral was maybe Sunday. She passed away on Tuesday something. And we make up, we're going to meet. I meet the family before to talk about the person who passed away. And we're talking. It's a Friday. I know for sure this was on Friday. And somehow we're talking, and it comes out that their mother was embalmed. So they embalmed her. And I kind of freaked out a little bit, because as far as I know, embalming is not allowed according to Jewish laws. As Alice asked, you can't embalm, you can't do something to stop the person from decomposing. So I right away called a rabbi to find out, to do some homework. And basically I found out that when they ship the body in the airplane, they have to inject something into the dye, something into the veins of the person to slow down the decomposing process. And that's what they would call today embalming, because it's a slowing of the process of the natural decay. However, it doesn't stop the decay. It just slows it. Instead of the body beginning to decompose in 3 days or 4, I don't know the exact, it takes 2 weeks. Whatever. No, it takes a week longer. This way, otherwise, they would put the body onto a plane. Yeah, it will start smelling. Unless the plane gets delayed. Let's say you're sending the body to Israel, okay? You know how long it takes for it's a 12-hour flight, plus customs, plus the tax. From when they leave the cemetery, they leave the funeral home, till it gets to a funeral home in Israel, it could be 24 hours, 48. Imagine the plane gets delayed a day into the snowstorm. The body's sitting out in the heat in the bottom of the plane, and it could start to stink the whole. So even though they're going to Israel, they put something in, like some kind of chemical into the veins that slows down the process. That's allowed. So the rabbis explained when Yaakov was embalmed, how long did it take for Yaakov from when he died till he was buried? 70 days. 70 days. It was a 40-day embalming process when everyone came to pay their respects. It was a 30-day funeral journey from Egypt to Israel. They mourned, etc. 30 days it took. Well, yeah, no, it was literally that's a. So the rabbis explained that the 40 days of embalming was putting him into like salt that would preserve his body. It's like to use herring or whatever. You put herring, you take a fish. How does it take a fish to decompose and stink? I don't know, 6 hours. But you put this fish into salt, right? And then the fish is cured. Not healed, it's not healthy, but it's cured that it can't smell. So that's what they did to Yaakov's body. They did things that would spices that would slow down the decay to allow for a dignified burial without his body smelling, but then his body would be able to become part of the earth. There are some places today when they do a burial, they take out the bottom of the coffin to make sure that the coffin, even though there's a coffin on top, the body is directly on the ground. In places where they don't do that, the Chaver Kadisha, they put into the coffin, they put earth from Israel on top of the eyes of the person that passed away. So there's already earth in the grave. In addition, let's say go to Star of David, where many of the burials take place here in South Florida, is in the cemetery, which is very by the book. And this is the way it's because of insurance and also because of the water level. They say that we live at sea level. So if the water rises, if someone's buried with a disease, it can contaminate the water level. So they actually bury, there's a cement vault. They call it a liner that they put into the ground, and this coffin goes into the liner. At a Chabad burial, when we do the burials, we actually break, the workers, they know that's what they have to do. They have to break 2 or 3 holes in the bottom of the liner to allow earth to be touching from the earth under the liner to the earth that we pour in when we do the burial. We cover the thing. Next time you come to funeral, I'm officiating. It's not that if you come look before, you'll see that there's earth there. Okay. Yeah, there's also holes at the bottom of the coffin as well, etc. Even by the way, and even in the coffins, there's no metal. There isn't even nails to hold the wood together. It's wooden pegs holding it together. Same reason, everything should decompose and all that. Okay, I'm not going to have time to get into the cremation and about the resurrection, which is what I wanted to talk about, because the other idea of Chesed Shalem is that it's an eternal, it's forever truth, because the truth forever that keeps the body alive, or the ability to become back to life when Mashiach will come. Maybe next week we'll continue. I want to show you an amazing story about the power of helping people have a kosher burial. It's a true story. Happened with someone from Montreal. I heard the name. I'm not 100% sure who it is anymore, so I don't want to say, so I'm not going to say the name of the person. This was a Chabad, a Lubavitcher businessman who lived in Montreal, who used to do business in New York. And this story really, really, really brings out the idea of how helping a person have a proper burial is a chesed shel emes. It's a kindness that's forever. It's a kindness of truth. As a kindness that's not forgotten, ever. By the way, just a side note, before I say this amazing story, just recently, someone posted a story. I shared this recently also in a speech a few weeks ago. It was a singer posted on his Instagram. He was at a cemetery. It was Tisha B'Av, and someone was being buried. And after they see another Levaya coming, just a few people, no one's really there, and they go over and they make the minyan say Kaddish, and they find out from the rabbi that this guy used to always come be the 10th man in the minyan. He was one of those guys like you call, like when we're short, 2 guys for the minyan. You post on the community chat, right? We have a minyan chat. We're short for the minyan. A guy shows up to make the minyan. This guy used to come. He wasn't religious, but he would come be the 10th man for the minyan. When he passed away, he was an old man by himself. Didn't have any kids, didn't have anyone, and that's why his burial, there was almost nobody there. But because he would come to make a minyan for others that needed, he was blessed that God should make it, that on the day he passed away, there'd be a bunch of people in the cemetery, religious Jews, a whole bunch of religious Hasidim that were all there, who came and said Kaddish and made a minyan, that he should be buried with a minyan as well. Making a minyan to say Kaddish, God will show that when you pass away, you'll have a minyan saying Kaddish at your funeral as well. Similar story, but much more amazing. So this story took place in the 70s and the 80s. So it was this chassid. He used to go on business on a pretty regular basis. He would drive from Montreal to New York, do whatever he had to do, and then he'd drive through the night, do what he do, and then drive back. And he had a sister who lived in Crown Heights, actually, Chabad. And that's where he would stay there. He would drive, he'd come and stay there, and then do business and drive back. So I know my Zaidi used to do this too. My grandfather was also in the Shmata business in Montreal. He used to also drive a lot. The Rebbe told him to stop every hour. He would drive through the night. Anyway, so this guy, one time, was going to drive, and his car is having some mechanical issues. It's not driving well. And, you're driving, a lot of times you push your car a little bit to the max, but to go take it for a 7-hour drive from Montreal to New York through the mountains, that you're not going to do if the car is not working well. So he takes his car to the mechanic to have it checked out, to have whatever had to be fixed, to have it fixed, the brakes, whatever. And he was going to take his wife's station wagon. Remember those things? Yeah, I remember that. The Oldsmobile sitting in the back facing, backwards. And he took his wife's station wagon. He's going to drive that to New York. Till he took his car to the mechanic, until he got the kids from school, until he got them in the station wagon and all that. Normally he would leave right after work, like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He would leave early from work, go straight. Now he had to go to the mechanic. He had to go home. He didn't end up leaving till 8, 9 o'clock after dinner. He left much, much later than he would normally leave. 10 o'clock at night, I don't know exactly. He left hours later than he would normally. Okay. So he starts to drive. And he's driving and he's driving. And it's very late, and he already ate, and this, and then all of a sudden getting really, really tired. And it's like feels like he can't drive. And so another 4 hours to go. He's already in New York. He crossed the border. And he's exhausted. He's driving. It's dark country roads, and it's already late at night. He says, it's too late, too tired. I still have 2 more hours. I'm not going to make it. I'm going to fall asleep at the wheel. I'm going to have to get off at the next exit and find a place, a hotel, somewhere to sleep for the night. So he didn't go to the cemetery like the other guy kicked out. He went to go find a hotel to sleep in. But this is before you had Google, before you had cell phones, before you could, just search. Today, you ready to put in the app, like the next hotel, 10 miles. You can call, you can book your room in the car. Didn't work like that. You have to get off at the next exit. And it wasn't even the exit. He's in somewhere upstate New York, somewhere in the mountains somewhere. Yeah, so it takes a good few miles till you find the next exit. And even there, you don't know what you're going to find there. Remember those places? Yeah, Monticello, Algermont, etc. And it's like dark. It's like, it's like lonely, the streets. It's like very easy to fall asleep when you're driving in the mountains alone at night and you're tired and you got a long way to go. So he finds the next exit. He pulls off. He's looking, trying to find the hotel. He finally finds a hotel. He's driving. He's like falling, so he can't go any further. He comes, it's a small little motel, and he comes in. They tell him, sorry, all the rooms are booked. There's no empty rooms. So he says, I don't know, there's a tournament, something was happening in town. There's no rooms available. So he says, okay, where's the next closest hotel to you? Oh, like I don't know, 20 miles away, like far. Oh, no, I can't drive so far. So the guy behind the counter says to him, the reception, if you want, right across the street, there's an old age home. And they're pretty empty. They have empty beds sometimes. And it's not been the first time when we overbooked and people came and needed space. The people they rented rooms. It's like upstate New York. It's a little hick town. They do it. It's not like, maybe if you're really desperate, go across the street. And if they have an empty room with an empty bed, maybe you can pay a few dollars to let you sleep there for the night if you don't care. Doesn't make a difference to him. So he goes across the street. Sure enough, they have empty rooms. They have an empty place. Whatever he pays, he goes to sleep. He wakes up in the morning and he's davening. Now he's praying before he gets back into the car to go. And now he's not going to go to Crown Heights. So he's going to go straight to Manhattan to go to wherever he's going to the meetings, whatever. He's praying. He's thinking to himself, he's a Chabad chassid. Now, Lubavitcher knows if you end up in some random hick town in the middle of nowhere in an old age home, there must be a reason why God put you here. It never happened to me. He left so late that he never stayed overnight in a motel somewhere up in the Catskills. He always would drive straight. The fact that he ended up in this particular town, not even in a hotel, but in an old age home, must be God is putting him here for a reason. There must be a Jew in this old age home that needs to put on tefillin, that needs to pray, that needs to speak to someone religious. So after he finishes praying, he goes to the front to check out, so to say, and to thank them. He says, tell me, I'm also a rabbi, I'm religious, and I'm wondering, I'm already here. I have to go to my meetings, but are there any Jews that are here in this facility? I would love to spend a few minutes meeting with them, praying with them before I leave. So the guy says, you're a day too late. What do you mean I'm a day too late? He said, yesterday there was a Jew that was here, but he died yesterday. We had a Jew in our religion. We had a Jew for many years, whatever. But yesterday in the morning he passed away. He was a poor man, destitute man. He had no family, no relatives. And so nothing. He died. So he realizes this is the guy he's here for. He says, what's going to happen to him? Where's he being buried? Who's burying him? So say he had no money, he had nothing. So the church takes anyone that's destitute, that doesn't have money to pay for a burial, gets buried in the church of the section for a free section for the poor. He's going to be buried in the non-Jewish, the Christian cemetery by the church. This Chabad Jew, this Jew here, this Jew that's in the old age home where he is going to be buried in a church. In a sense, exactly why God put me here right now. And then he goes, also, that's why I have a station wagon. Normally, he would drive in a small little car, more gas efficient. But his car needed to be repaired. The brakes weren't working, whatever it was. And so he's driving this big station wagon to New York instead of a small little car. He has room in the back to put in a dead body. He tells the guy, I'm taking the body with me. I'm going to bury the body in New York. The guy says, excuse me? Doesn't work that way. We don't just take dead bodies. Today it would never happen, but like this is, a long time ago. He says, yep, I want to take responsibility for the body. I'll sign whatever paperwork I need to sign, whatever documentation you want me to sign. Instead of giving his body to the church, or the church will bury him, let me take his body and I'll bury him instead. Obviously, the guy wasn't authorized to do that. They had to call the manager and this and that. Took 2 hours to call them, whoever had to be called, to get the proper paperwork and had to sign the paperwork. And now instead of leaving early in the morning, now it's, I don't know the time, it's hours later until everything was signed and they agreed and they let him take the dead body and he signed where he's going to take the body. And he took responsibility. And now instead of driving to Manhattan to a business meeting, now he's driving with a dead body in his trunk, and he has to find a way to bury this guy. He's find a way to bury. So he drives all the way to New York, he gets into the Bronx, whatever. He gets into New York, to the city. He opens up a phone book, against it before cell phones, comes to a payphone. He opens up the phone book. He used to have those things back then. Remember, once upon a time, phone books. He's looking for cemeteries, looking for a Jewish cemetery. He starts calling one after another, quarter after quarter, calling cemeteries, finding if any cemeteries have a section for poor people that we buried to help them that can't afford to be buried, a section for destitute people. Finally, he finds a place somewhere in the Bronx that does indeed a Jewish cemetery, does indeed have a section of free graves to people in need, and he takes his body. He drives because the address is he's in Manhattan. He's in the city. He's driving all the way to the Bronx to some cemetery to go take his body. His day is ruined. There's no more business for him. But obviously, this is his mitzvah. He finally makes it to the Bronx. He comes to the office of the director of the funeral, and of course, you just rock up with a dead body. It's a little suspicious, and they want to verify everything. Takes all the paperwork, whatever he had, his birth certificate, and whatever, death certificate, all the paperwork he got from the old age home. And the funeral director is looking at the paperwork. And all of a sudden, the funeral director says, this is crazy. This can't be. This can't be. He goes out, goes back, comes in, makes a phone call, gets other papers. And finally tells this guy, you will never believe this. Many, many, many years ago, the person that gave the money, the seed money to buy this property, to become a cemetery for poor people, is the person in the back of your trunk. They check the paperwork, they check the name, they check the date of birth. Many, many years earlier, this guy was a very wealthy Jew living in the Bronx. He had no family. He never had kids. He never had any family. And he felt bad for those people that die alone without family, that don't have anyone to take care of responsibility, to pay for a burial, to make sure they're buried with a proper, dignified way. And so this person decided to use his money to help buy a section of a cemetery, be exclusive for poor people that have no one to bury them. And God made it that this person ended up losing his money or became poor, whatever. No one knew who he was. He ended up living all alone in an old age home somewhere in upstate New York. And God made it that when it be the time for him to pass away, that someone will be driving through the mountains with a station wagon, would sleep in that place where he had been, to take his body from there to be buried in the place that he had given money for many, many years before. That is a very powerful story. Very powerful story. Brings up this idea so powerfully that what happens to the body is so important. And the importance of making sure that a person is buried the proper way, in a holy way, in a Jewish way, is a chesed shel emes. It's the truest act of kindness, the truest act of love and respect and goodness that you can do to a person to make sure that when they're buried the way their soul wants. Not the way that they said when they were alive, they didn't know the difference because they were living in the world of falsehood. But now that they're in the world of truth, their soul knows the truth. The soul wants to be buried in a holy way, in a Jewish way, And giving that person the opportunity to be buried in the Jewish way is the greatest act of kindness you can ever do for a person. You can ever do in your life. The greatest act of chesed, chesed shel emes, is giving the person that act of kindness to make sure they're buried in a holy, spiritual way. Thank you, my friends. Very possibly, I'll continue next week, even though it's not connected to the Torah reading, but maybe we'll find a way to connect it. I don't know. But it's an important topic. And of course, if you know someone, or you know someone that doesn't have a proper kosher burial arrangements and needs help making arrangements, or wants to talk more about making arrangements, please reach out to me. You can private message me. You can call me. Send me a message on Facebook. I don't always see Facebook. You can email me. You can call me. My cell number is 954-471-8646. I'd be glad to help someone who needs help getting the proper arrangements. Okay, my number is rabbi@mychabadcenter.org or 954-471-8646. This is one of the most important mitzvot and the greatest acts of kindness we can ever do. Okay. Thank you, Mario. I'm glad you enjoyed. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Ravid, for all your feedback and insights. Correct. Thank you, Jessica. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you, Andrea. Oh, hello, Andrea. Hello, Maria. Shalom to you as well. And let's see who's watching on Chabad.org. Art. Thank you, Art. I'm glad that you are inspired. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Dana. Baruch Hashem, indeed. Mara, thank you. Appreciate it. Lori. Those souls murdered by the Nazis, they immediately have an absolutely. A person who's killed for being a Jew is considered a kadosh. And the kadosh goes straight to heaven. They are kadoshim. Ali Schlenger's grandfather was killed by the Nazis. And Ali Schlenger, Rabbi Ali Schlenger, was killed in Sydney. He was a grandson. His grandfather was killed by the Nazis. He carried his name. He was killed for being a Jew. They're all holy. Anyway, that's another story for another time. Riemann, you're looking to convert. Okay. Shalom. Okay. I have to tell my friends. See you all next week. Maybe I think we'll continue the theme. I think we'll talk about cremation maybe next week. Hello, Ellen. Let's talk. If you want to talk more about making things the proper kosher way, I'm always here to help you. Good night, everyone. Good night, Alice. Thanks for the heart. Thanks for the love. Laila Tov. Thank you, Ravit. God bless you.